I'm actually going to begin a few verses earlier than what you have in your bulletins. So if you see the bishop, I just was thinking, so don't tell him. So again, Jesus said to them, "Very truly I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and bandits, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters by me will be saved and will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I come that they may have life and have it abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand who is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and runs away, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. The hired hand runs away because a hired hand does not care for the sheep. But I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. And they lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that do not belong to this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd. For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life in order to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay down of my own accord. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it up again. I have received this command from my Father." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Take a seat. I know that most of the time you hear someone preach up there, but that feels too far for me. I prefer to be with my brothers and sisters from different mountains and top. So I'm down here. My name is Ryan Chaddick. I am a second-year MDiv student at Claremont School of Theology, but more important, probably to you, and to me too, my wife, Melissa Chaddick, is your youth director, your youth minister. So you know me through her in that school. I am taking a preaching class, and they have this strange requirement. They ask you to preach. And so I asked Pastor Bruce, because I knew that you had all been so warm, welcoming, and beautiful to Melissa. And I was like, if I have to preach in front of a group of people, maybe it would be your beautiful faces. And so I asked Pastor Bruce, and here I am. By the way, that's a rhetorical device known as sucking up to your congregation and crowd, and I am not above it. It is my privilege and my honor to be in front of you and offering up this sacred gift, this sacred part of the homiletical sermon. So let me just briefly pray. Lord, may the meditation of my heart and the words of my lips be pleasing to you, and may it offer grace and peace to all of us. Amen. If you are like me, you have noticed that when things start falling apart, when life starts getting a little heavy, when the sort of daily rigors of stress pile on, or things don't go according to plan, and you feel lost, some people respond to us with blame. They ask for nothing but blame, or shame, and finger pointing. Other people respond to us in those moments with meaningless cliches, sayings or statements or platitudes that mean nothing. Sometimes when it all hits the fan, if you know what I'm talking about, people come up to us and they just offer us blame. When my mother, who is here tonight, when she was diagnosed with a chronic pain disorder, people in her worship community came out of the woodwork and offered unbelievably destructive things like, well, is there some sort of sin in your life that you just need to confess? Or is this God's only way of getting your attention? Now, I know we in the mainline tradition would never say anything so hurtful or destructive, right? This week, though, I learned that a mainline pastor, after experiencing some trauma with her own children, one of her child is going through some severe anxiety and depression and contemplated suicide. And one of her fellow pastors said to her, maybe you're not a very good parent. Oh, that doesn't help. That hurts. That hurts. There's this gut-wrenching, And some of us become so accustomed to this blame game that when something bad happens to us, we don't need other people to start blaming us. We do it for ourselves. We start blaming ourselves. Oh, if only I hadn't done this, then this terrible thing wouldn't have happened. When bad things happen to us, sometimes people just offer us blame. Other times, people offer us meaningless cliches and platitudes. In 2010, this group of teenagers, because they were bullied and because they were abused at school, took their lives. This rash of teenagers began to commit suicide because they could not handle being bullied. And so people came out of the woodworks and started creating these videos and put them on YouTube with this very basic message. Yes, life is hard now. Yes, being bullied is terrible, but life, it gets better. And so people found these videos amazing, and everyone from the president and his wife, and ELCA, and even my home congregation made one of these videos with that very basic message. Yes, this is hard, but life gets better. One of the teenagers who made a video, Jamie from Buffalo, New York, a 14-year-old, was so inspired that he too wanted to make one of these videos. And so in May of 2011, he did. He made that It Gets Better video, put it out there on YouTube, and yet, in September 2011, just a few months later, Jamie took his life because he too couldn't handle the bullying and the abuse. For Jamie, life didn't get better. When things get really tough and really difficult, some people just offer us blame, and some people just offer us meaningless platitudes, meaningless cliches. How many here have felt lost in the last month or two? Or how many feel lost right now? How many of us are like, oh, the stress of the day from our jobs, from our family, it just is piling on. It's like, oh, I can't take it. I just feel lost. And if someone were to offer us blame, if someone were to offer us some sort of cliche, it wouldn't help. How many of us feel lost? I mean, the economy, it's getting better, but it's sort of just limping along, right? And so maybe you thought by this point in your life you would be retired. But the way the economy is just limping on, you can't. So you feel lost. Or how many of you are entering that season in your life in which your friends and your family and your loved ones are fading away? And it's just like, I feel lost. Right now, I am in the ordination process. And one of the things that I'm going to have to do is move to Berkeley for 2 semesters. And so I have to move from my wife and my family and live in Berkeley. I don't really know anyone there. And so I just kind of feel this change is a little heavy. So sometimes I feel kind of lost. And on top of it, my best friend for the last 15 years, he and his wife are about to have a baby. And while I am so joyful and so excited for that beauty that's entering into life, there's also this sense of loss, like things are never going to be the same between us. And so if someone were to say, well, life gets better, I'd say, no, I like how things are right now. Or I like how things were. Don't tell me it's going to get better. I've enjoyed it how it's been. How many of us just Jesus' disciples felt lost too. The people that Jesus spoke with, the crowds that Jesus spoke around and hung out with, they felt lost too. Yes, they were living in the land that was promised to them by God. Yes, they were living in the promised land, the land of milk and honey. But because the Roman Empire occupied their land, the milk and the honey was taxed, levied, and stolen. So they felt lost. The people that listened to Jesus, the people that followed Jesus, lived in abject poverty. They felt lost. And I know this will come as a surprise to you, but this sort of blame game or these meaningless cliche sort of offerings, it's not a brand new phenomenon. People did it back then too. And so you had religious leaders going around and pointing fingers and blaming you and your sin. That's why God is punishing us. That's why the Romans are here. It's because of your sin, because of what you're doing. It's your fault. And they created rule after rule after rule. We call this legalism. But there were also a group of people that offered meaningless cliches. And they went out in the desert and just said, well, God's going to come down and fix all this. And they kind of died in the desert. Blame or meaningless platitudes don't help us. And they didn't help back then. Jesus' disciples didn't follow Jesus because he offered blame. They didn't follow Jesus because he offered some sort of meaningless cliche. They followed Jesus because he offered something different. He offered life. His message was inspiring. His message wasn't about blame. His message wasn't some trite cliche. It was something inspiring, something life-giving. And today's gospel beautifully illustrates his message and his point. But in order to understand today's gospel, we have to sort of back up just a little bit. In order to understand sometimes like a piece in a puzzle, you have to like look at the box. Oh, that's what's going on. At least, well, I'm terrible at puzzles, so that doesn't even help me. But it helps a lot of people. So I'm assuming it's a good analogy. Shouldn't make up jokes on the spot because you forget where you are. Alright. So, Sabbath was essential to the Jewish understanding of spirituality. Sabbath was and still is essential to understanding the Jewish awareness of spirituality. God created Sabbath for rest. God created Sabbath for rest as worship. God created Sabbath so that all of creation could rest. So Sabbath is about justice. Sabbath is rest as worship. Sabbath is participation with the divine because even God rested on the seventh day of creation. When I wrote that, I was really inspired. So I'm going to say that again. God created Sabbath for us. Sabbath is participation with the divine because even God rested on the seventh day of creation. God created Sabbath for humans, for restoring, for renewing, for healing, for rest. But because the people in Jesus' time felt lost, those individuals who were all into pointing fingers and blaming, they made Sabbath into this whole long list of do's and don'ts because there's evidently a way in which you can rest and a way in which you can't rest. So rule after rule after rule. And one fine Sunday morning when Jesus was walking and he encounters this troubled young man who cannot see, Jesus kneels down and heals and restores the man's sight. Jesus participates with the divine and brings healing and restoration. But we can have none of that over here. No. Healing on Sabbath? No. Healing is some sort of work. That's not rest. And so the religious leaders pointed fingers at Jesus and said, you can't heal on the Sabbath because healing is work. You're not resting. So they pointed fingers and they blamed Jesus. And it's in response to that. It's in response to the accusations. It's in response to Jesus being told that he's not doing Sabbath correctly that he begins this discussion about being a good Sabbath. Now, did Jesus use this imagery, good Sabbath, because he knew that in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, when people were going to Sunday school, there'd be that nice little flannel board and a nice little flannel Jesus carrying the lamb? Is that what Jesus was thinking of? Probably not. I like to think so. But Jesus uses that phrase, a good shepherd, because it's a signal phrase, it's a trigger phrase. Those who were listening to Jesus, their minds would have immediately started racing to the writings of the prophets, to the writings of the poets, to the writings of the psalmists, who use that same phrase. Just like if I were to stand in front of you here today and say, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you. Your minds immediately start filling in that phrase. Your minds immediately start going back to a particular historical event, to a speech, to a president, to a context. The same thing happened for those who were listening to Jesus. And so when Jesus says, I am the good shepherd, their minds started thinking about what we call the Old Testament. Their minds would have been thinking about Ezekiel 34, where God speaks to that prophet and says, I will search for my sheep and rescue them and bring them home. They would have thought about being rescued. They would have thought about how Jesus is rescuing them. They would have thought about Isaiah 40, in which God speaks to that prophet and says, I will feed the flock like a shepherd, gather the lambs in my arms, carry them tenderly in my bosom, and lead them home. Jesus' discussion would have been full of images of being tenderly cared for. Or they would have thought about the psalm that we read together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures. God leads me beside still waters, restores my soul. God leads me in right paths. Thus, Jesus is saying that as the Good Shepherd, he is a rescuer who seeks lost sheep, carries tenderly the lost sheep, and brings them to green pastures to lie beside still waters. Jesus is a rescuer. Jesus is a liberator. Jesus is seeking the lost, the stressed out, the hopeless, and bringing them tenderly into the land of life. Jesus is talking about a Sabbath way of living. Jesus is talking about life, eternal life. Jesus is trying to remind his audience about the meaning of Sabbath. He is trying to convey the entire Sabbath way of life. You can have your Sabbath day, but Jesus is saying there's a Sabbath way of living Monday through Sunday. Jesus is reminding his people that there is life, a way of life that doesn't just begin after we die. No, this life, it begins here and now. The good and abundant life, the Sabbath way of life, doesn't begin after we die. It very much so begins here and now. Yes, Jesus is saying Roman occupation is here, and it's terrible, and it's horrible and wrong, and yes, Jesus does confront those power structures. But Jesus is also reminding his audience that even in the midst of occupation, even in the midst of suffering, even in the midst of despair, that you can have life, an abundant life. Yes, the economy is just sort of limping along. And yes, for some of you, chronic pain is very much a daily reality. And And yes, for some of you, that diagnosis will never go away. And yes, change is always going to be with us. But Jesus is reminding all of us today that in the midst of all of those storms, there is peace and there is life. Peace. Sabbath way of living. In this moment, in scary, dark times, Jesus is still seeking the lost and still carrying all of us through those green pastures to lie beside still waters. Jesus is on a relentless search for all of us who feel lost. And even when the storms are completely raging all around us, and life feels like it's unbearable, we can exist in that abiding presence of love. We can exist in the green pastures beside still waters. We can be in that eye of the storm when everything feels like it's just too much. There is peace in the center. There is peace in the calm in the center. Because Psalms 23 continues, even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and staff, they comfort me. Jesus' message is not a message of bully or shame. Jesus' message is not some sort of meaningless cliche. Jesus' message is that real and full, abundant life is here, and it is now. And so even though my life feels like it's a little with these changes, I am reminded that Jesus is seeking after me and bringing me home into lands of green pastures, into a land of still waters, so that my soul and my body may be restored, so that I might find peace. His message is for all of us. Jesus is constantly seeking out all of us. And we can stare into the darkest valleys of hopelessness, of hardships, of despair, of struggles, but we can find a peace and a hope beyond it all. Jesus is enticing and bringing us into that center, into those abiding, loving arms of God. The Good Shepherd is after all of us to bring us home, to bring us to peace. So may you go forward, knowing better this full and abundant life. May you know Sabbath in a more full and complete way. May the daily rigors of life not be the incredible burden. May you find that center, that place of love. May you know a Sabbath way of living.